Sunday than it was during the summer when it was so much warmer in this room. Now we are truly into autumn and the crispness of things. And I have to say, it took me a bit as a surprise when I took a book out from the library and its due date in 3 weeks was November 1st. How did that sneak up on us so quickly? Yesterday we were out celebrating with the PBA with 30 churches, the work that is going on in our communities. And among those 30 churches, there were over 600 people present. And that's 30 out of 129 churches in the PBA. That was a pretty impressive crowd, I have to say. And we got to hear an old friend of mine, Don A., who is now the president of the American Baptist Churches USA. Did I just drop names? Oh. Today, many people are voicing frustration with modern expressions of Christianity. They are also aggravated with Christians who approach them in an aggressive manner. Many of the frustrated people are fairly young. The statistics break down like this. While only 27% of people ages 42 and above are outside of the Christian faith community, roughly 40% of younger people aged between 16 and 41 are outside of the faith in the United States. Sadly, these aggravated younger age groups are also the ones who are often most compelled and most interested in helping others in our community, working with service and justice projects. These are people with skill sets we could use to follow Paul's call to evangelize by experience. Paul guides us toward a work of faith and a labor of love. Beautiful turn of phrase. We are called to serve a living and true God in all we say and do, so that the joy we take from the Holy Spirit may become known far and wide. If we serve as evangelists by carrying example, we too should be able to spread the faith. We might even change some of those minds about who we Christians are and what our faith actually means. We may shorten those percentages. If the scholars are correct, this letter to the Thessalonians was Paul's very first letter. That would also make it the earliest surviving document of our faith. It was written around 50 AD, within 2 decades of Jesus' resurrection. The situation was this: Paul was in trouble. Well, Paul was in trouble a lot, so that's nothing new. He had been preaching Jesus as the Messiah, the Jewish king, in Thessalonica. Doing so, he had been charged with preaching of another king besides Caesar. And that was a very dangerous accusation to have made against you. Associated with Paul, the young Thessalonian church was being persecuted. Ever since Paul had left town by association with him, Paul praised these struggling Christians for keeping and spreading the faith. They managed this using a form of evangelism very different from what we think of today. Today we imagine evangelism that moves in one direction only, from the talking evangelist to a passive and receptive audience. In Paul's day, the evangelism of the Thessalonians was much more interactive in nature. The church interacted with Paul and his co-workers. Their work together left both sides changed. In this active exchange, the Thessalonians also became evangelists, and quite successful ones according to Paul's letter. We are not exactly sure how Paul's early evangelical messages were delivered, we know he did not have a booming voice, and that he did not like to chastise people in public. So it is possible that that as he plied his trade, being a tent maker and a maker of leather goods, that he talked with many people about Jesus who came to see him. He spoke to them in workshops and small informal gatherings. There may have been a lot of give and take between him and his listeners. I know that when I'm teaching, as I have been recently, I learn as much as my classmates do. Oh, you might think that's just a cliche, all too modest line, but it's actually true. I've heard professors say the same. However, Paul evangelized. He wrote that the message came to his hearers not in words alone, but also in power and in the Holy Spirit and with full conviction. This was far more than a mere expression of words, more than an intellectual exercise, but it took on many other enriching forms. Now here comes an important point. In response to Paul and his co-workers' efforts, the Thessalonians were inspired to imitate these evangelists because, as Paul said, in spite of persecution, you received the word with joy, inspired by the Holy Spirit. Beyond merely meaning what these evangelists said, the Thessalonians were inspired to imitate them, making them their models, models of joy in an active and interactive faith, even in the face of persecution. So evangelism among the Thessalonians was a two-way street, a mutual exchange in which everyone was transformed. Paul and his co-workers became deeply involved with the Thessalonians. They rolled up their sleeves and worked alongside the Thessalonians to care for them. Paul and his colleagues became vulnerable to these people, and the Thessalonians responded powerfully to that example. The Thessalonians were so moved they imitated their evangelists, trusting, being caring, relational. This is how they perceived the evangelism of Paul and his co-workers and how they became evangelists themselves. Paul wrote, "You became an example to all the believers of Macedonia and in Achaia." Other people were influenced by the evangelical lives of those Thessalonians who were living with joy inspired by the Holy Spirit. This is an excellent example for all of us to follow today, if we're courageous enough to be that vulnerable. We also have to be willing to spend time with others, to get to know them, to build relationships with them, and to be willing to help them in their need where they are. Our missionaries work around the globe in this way, and they are a good example for us to imitate. Like Paul and his co-workers, missionaries too live with and care for the people they evangelize. Like Paul, the missionaries I've known are also transformed by the relationship. If we choose to live out Paul's example of this early form of evangelical Christianity, we too can change the lives of others and be changed ourselves. We will get to know our community better, and they will get to know us as well. We will have a chance to show others that we are not the stereotype of Christianity so often portrayed, when the loudest and most extreme wings of the faith speak out for us. We can prove in loving action that we are not hypocritical, focused only on converts, standing against so many things, out of touch with reality, hyper-political, and extremely judgmental. That's how many outside the faith see us. Employing Paul's powerful methods, we will also find ourselves drawn into a more close-knit community of our own. Churches that undertake this form of evangelism say over and over again in surprise that their churches have come to feel much more like welcoming homes to them. They have become a tighter-knit community. I believe you could call this Paul's joy inspired by the Holy Spirit. This joy comes from drawing closer to the ways of God by imitating Jesus and following Paul's example. When the Thessalonians chose to live out the faith, they did not need to simply speak out about it, because they were living expressions of their faith, acting it out consistently and with integrity. They were noticed by others. They were talked about. No doubt they were approached others in need, and faith spread. If we choose to follow the examples of the Thessalonians, of Paul, and of Jesus, we will do the work of faith and the labor of love. From this will grow steadfastness in our hope in Jesus. This work of faith can be undertaken wherever we are, when we're together or when we're scattered. We may choose daily to live out our faith, following Jesus' two great commandments to love God and love our neighbors, wherever that takes us, and in all that we do. Finding ways to treat others more gently is a worthy challenge. Taking the time out of the day to reach out a helping hand when the opportunity arises is another. Such efforts may wreak havoc with our schedules from time to time, but they will enrich us, as each encounter will be a two-way transaction, each person learning from the other. I had just written that when Jill walked into my office and said, "Pastor, the food cupboard is out of food. Can we take the stuff that's here on Monday?" I said, "Well, God, you got me." So I set aside my schedule, and we went off to the food cupboard immediately with what we had. It didn't wreak that much havoc, and I did learn a lot in the exchange. Not to mention I got out on a beautiful sunshiny day, so there was another improvement for me. In time, people will come to see us differently than we have so often been portrayed. We will be seen as kinder, gentler, more helpful, truly living out our faith, and while entirely human, not hypocritical about it at all. In this work, we will also show others what faith can do. We can show that faith produces any number of good works. Those good works can truly make a difference. I remember a woman whose house was falling apart, and she was receiving help with repairs from dedicated church members. She asked them, genuinely puzzled, "Why are you doing this?" The answer was, because Jesus told us to and showed us how. Those church members were imitating Christ and changing lives while working directly with others. I'm sure they were affected by the process as well. Following this path, we will break down stereotypes others have about us. We will also have torn down for us stereotypes we may be carrying about others, whether we are aware of it or not, as we get out and know them much better. The end result will be the growth of joy and a spreading of the faith. If we resist imitating Paul's engaging form of evangelism, we miss that opportunity to grow individually and as a community. We miss the opportunity to be vulnerable to others, learning from them as we learn how to help them. And we offer no healing to the many hurts that divisions in our society have created. If we choose to forego the work of faith and labor of love, we lose out on a great many relationships. We lose our chance to express our faith in a meaningful way to others and to spread the good news of Jesus' love far and wide. We lose an opportunity to raise our voices and prove through our actions that we are not the negative stereotype that we've been portrayed to be. If we do not act, we also lose out on that great sense of family and that joy that comes from drawing closer to God and God's ways. That doesn't seem like much of a joyful option to me. There are many practical things that can be done to imitate Paul and the church of Thessalonica. I don't know why I'm stumbling on that today. My friend and fellow member of the Ministerium of Eastern Delaware County, Reverend Moses Dennis, is originally from Liberia. He has many family members and friends in what is now known tragically as the Ebola Belt. He lost a close personal friend there not long ago who was trying to help others. Reverend Dennis is currently collecting supplies to send through the Liberian Ministers Association of Delaware Valley to those providing aid to the stricken. This includes a variety of medical supplies, such as saline and heavy-duty gloves, hand sanitizers, and also small mattresses, blankets, and bedding. A complete list and the letter may be found on the bulletin board in the Cooper Room. Through this organization, those struggling to care for the ill and limit the impact of this insidious disease will know that Christians on the other side of the world care about them and about what happens to them and their charges. It is one way to conduct evangelism by example, even at a great distance. Dexter Ladcock, who runs the Epiphany House up the street, is seeking seniors who would be willing to volunteer some time, their love, and faith to work with children in foster care. This intergenerational relationship would allow love to grow in both directions and plenty of opportunities for learning to take place through action. Dexter would like to begin with a child in the care of Epiphany House right now, Alex, who has trouble in groups but is great with people one-on-one. This beautiful and challenged child loves to ride the trolley, and seniors and Alex would both ride for free. Here's another opportunity for Paul's unique experiential evangelism to take place. There are many other possibilities ready for and open to us. We have been to the National Night Out. We have had the community join us in our picnic and our end-of-year school bash. That was so much fun. We have feasted with friends, opened the church for the Christmas fair, and fed people pancakes on Memorial Day. We are continuing Operation Christmas Child. But we are called to imitate Jesus, Paul, and the Thessalonians further. There are many ways to accomplish this goal. Many I'm sure that you can think of that I haven't even approached yet. Offering educational opportunities with informative materials ready for use on a number of life issues, helping the community through a program involving one Sunday in which the church is closed. Yeah, I said that. And we are worshiping in the community instead, helping others through coordinated projects. I've seen that one in action, and it is wonderful. There are many ways for us to live out our faith, provide evangelism by example, and show others the God who loves them. Paul calls us to action this Sunday. Will we open our eyes and our hearts to the opportunities all around us? Will we live out our faith in our actions to others? Will we be able to change those preconceived notions and lower those percentages among the young and the middle-aged? I believe we can. Imitate Paul, live out our faith in relationships with others, helping them through the rough patches of life, and faith will spread, just as it did for the Thessalonians as the word got out. And with that effort, that work of faith, labor of love, will come great joy. Let us take a moment for silent